Guys, we are back. Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon. As always, it is so great to see you. And friends, we're going to be talking about photographing waterfalls. Now, as many of you know, my passion is landscape photography. And living in Southern California, man, there is absolutely no shortage of epic landscapes for me to photograph that really aren't too far from where I live. But one of my absolute favorite landscapes to photograph are waterfalls, and man, unfortunately, there aren't many of them around the Los Angeles or Orange County area. Nevertheless, this is our rainy season and streams are flowing, and this got me thinking about sharing a few critical tips about taking spectacular photos of waterfalls. But first, hey, if this is your first time tuning into the channel, I want to shake your hand and welcome you here and say thanks for watching this video. If you're a returning guest, hey, you get the virtual high five. You kick ass. Great to see you again. And if you haven't yet subscribed, why not? We have a lot of fun here, and we have killer monthly giveaways with some excellent prizes, but you have to be subscribed in order to be eligible to win. So consider going down below and hitting that subscribe button. Worst case scenario, you'll learn a little bit about photography and you might win some cool prizes while you're at it. Now, with that said, pull up a seat in, let's go. Now, to get a photo with beautiful blurry water as it cascades over the cliff's edge, you need to slow down the shutter speed. The tricky part of this is that there's no hard and fast shutter speed you should use to achieve this blurred effect. This means you might need to experiment with the shutter speed to find the sweet spot. In some instances, 2 to 3 seconds might suffice. In other situations, you might find that a 5-second is going to get you the best results. Now, of course, you'll likely not be able to slow the shutter speed down or that far down when shooting during daytime without changing the exposure settings because of the risk of overexposing the shot, or the help of an ND filter, which more on that in a bit. Now, you can shoot in shutter priority mode, which allows you to set the shutter speed and the ISO as you wish, and the camera is going to adjust the aperture accordingly. Now, for example, let's say you start with a shutter speed of 1/200th of a second and an ISO of 800. That shutter speed is too fast to blur movement. You need to slow things down. By adjusting the ISO from 800 to 100, the shutter speed slows from 1/200th of a second to 1/25th of a second. This still might not be slow enough, but you can see how adjusting one setting, in this case the ISO, can help slow the shutter significantly. Now, you can also shoot in manual mode and make the adjustments to all 3 exposure settings to get a good exposure. Now, if you aren't sure how to shoot in manual or shoot priority mode for that matter, check the description below for links to tutorials that will help you out. For example, if you're shooting in an aperture of f8 and the shutter speed of 1/250th of a second, try changing the aperture to f11 or f16 to slow the shutter down. And as we just discussed, you can lower the ISO to slow the shutter even further. In some cases, closing down the aperture and minimizing the ISO will slow the shutter enough to blur movement. However, since we need such a long shutter speed, you'll find that even if you close down the aperture or minimize the ISO or both, that the image is sometimes still too bright. This brings me to the next tip. Heading out on an overcast day to photograph waterfall works to your advantage because cloudy conditions allow you to slow the shutter speed down with less worry of overexposing than if you shoot on a bright sunny day. Now, what's more, the colors of the surrounding landscape, like leaves on the trees, the moss on the rocks, and so forth, can really pop when you're taking photos on an overcast day. Now, one caveat about waterfall photography on cloudy days is that you probably want to avoid having the sky in your shot. That flat gray sky won't do much in your photos in terms of visual appeal. Additionally, on cloudy days, try finding a high vantage point and shooting down towards the waterfall to eliminate the sky in the shot. We'll talk more about vantage points here in a minute. A neutral density filter is a must for waterfall photography because it eliminates the risk of overexposing your shot. A solid ND filter like this blocks light from entering the camera's lens, therefore allowing you to use longer shutter speeds. Now these filters come in a variety of strengths, with 2-stop, 3, 4, 6, 10, and even 15 being among some of the most popular. Now the higher the stop value, the darker the filter is and the less light that is going to come through or is going to pass through into the lens. And to make an illustration, I have some Polar Pro. These are the Summit filters. I absolutely love them. I'm not sure if this is going to show. Okay, so you can see, let's see here. You can see I'm going to see if I can get all these held up here without dropping these here. Okay, so you can see, or hopefully you might be able to, as we go from, this is a ND8, ND64, and a ND1000. You can see this is much darker, this is much lighter. So the lighter filter here, that's going to let a lot more light into the lens than something like this one right here. For example, imagine that you have your camera set to manual mode and the shutter at 1/250th of a second and an aperture of f/16 and an ISO of 100. If you add a 1-stop ND filter to the equation, the shutter speed can move down to 1/125th of a second. Now, if you use a 10-stop ND filter, you can move the shutter speed down to 4 seconds. So this enables you to extend your shutter speed even on the brightest of days and still get a well-exposed shot with the beautiful blurry motion that you want in waterfall photos. A polarizing filter like this one right here from Breakthrough Photography is going to help improve your waterfall images in multiple ways. First, polarizing filters help reduce the glare off the surfaces of water as well as non-metallic objects, like for example wet plants or rocks as the base of the waterfall, or at the base of the waterfall rather. By using a polarizing filter, you get images in which you can see the surface of the water rather than the blinding glare from the sun off the water. Second, polarizers boost the contrast and saturation in the scene. You're going to find colors that are much more vibrant in your waterfall shots when you use a polarizer. As you can see in this video, without the polarizer, the scene is, well, high contrast and low saturation. But with a polarizer, the colors really pop. This is true for the sky as well. If you photograph a waterfall in which the sky is visible, you're going to see that the blue color in the atmosphere is much deeper while the white clouds actually have much more pop to them. Third, a polarizer helps reduce atmospheric haze. When photographing a waterfall from a distance, you might find that using a polarizer helps kind of clean up the shot and that the landscape appears much crisper. Polarizers also help block light, generally, typically about 1 to 2 stops. So if you don't have a ND filter handy, using a polarizer could help you slow the shutter speed down enough to get nice blurry water. Since we're dealing with extended shutter speeds, you need to support your camera with a tripod to avoid camera shake. Now, even if you have steady hands of a surgeon, you can't hold the camera still enough to get good results for a long exposure. You don't have to go all out and spend hundreds of dollars on a tripod either. Now, there are plenty budget-friendly tripods on the market that will stabilize your camera just fine for long exposure photography. Now, regardless whether I'm talking about my Pro Media Gear tripods, or in this case, this is a Colorado Tripod Company Centennial tripod. Guys, I like my landscape tripods that have these big rubber feet and metal spikes to help prevent the feet from slipping on wet, icy, or even uneven terrain. Now this is really helpful if you're venturing into a stream to set up your camera for a waterfall shot as well. Having a tripod that's waterproof is really helpful, especially if you plan to photograph a lot of waterfalls. When choosing a landscape tripod, also look at its size and weight. Carbon fiber tripods tend to be much lighter, which is handy when you have to trek far into wherever you're going to get to the waterfalls that you want to photograph. For example, you may want to take a look at a Peak Design tripod. These things are crazy lightweight, and as you can see, it's very small. Having a tripod that really folds down into compact size is really nice, so you can fit it into your bag. Heck, you can almost fit this in a cargo pocket for that matter, or easily lash it to the back side of your camera bag. A tripod is essential for waterfall photography, so if you don't have one, get one as soon as possible. Now, just on a side, pick up a camera remote when you get a tripod. Using a remote also allows you to trigger the shutter without touching the camera, and this is just one more thing that you can do to minimize camera shake. Now you can actually pick up a camera remote for 10 to 15 bucks, and that of course is a very small price to pay for sharp images. Now of course, like this Canon, this is a TC80N3. Now this is a little bit more expensive. This is like 150 bucks, but you also get more features that come along with it as well. Now there's nothing wrong with photographing waterfall from straight on. In fact, it's often the kind of the postcard shot that everyone wants to take, but don't be satisfied with the same shot that everyone else get. Guys, instead, get out, branch out to find interesting points of view. Move to the left of the waterfall, then move to the right, get down low, and then find a higher vantage point if possible. You see where I'm leaning with this? Try shooting through something like framing the waterfall through branches of a tree. Friend, by moving around the waterfall and seeking out a different vantage point, you not only have an opportunity to add variety to your collection of photos, but it also helps you develop your creative eye. An improved creative eye, hell, never hurt anyone. Since waterfalls are typically tall and thin, it makes much more sense to photograph them in portrait orientation. But just like the previous tip, it's important to branch out. Some waterfalls are actually as wide as they are tall, and in some instances, the width exceeds the height. This being the case, it's sometimes necessary to turn your camera from portrait to landscape orientation to photograph waterfalls. Now, even if a waterfall is tall and thin, a landscape orientation could yield you interesting results, like a shot from the bottom of the waterfall as it empties into a shallow pool. Again, this is all about being creative and challenging yourself to break out of the norm once in a while. For many people, a wide-angle lens is the go-to glass for landscapes, including waterfalls. Now, wide-angle lenses are great for those big, dramatic shots of waterfalls in context of its surrounding, or if you want to frame up a shot of the waterfall from top to bottom. But it's fun to experiment with focal lengths as well. For example, you might bring a telephoto lens, or hell, for that matter, borrow or rent one, to capture more intimate shots of waterfalls. Likewise, a longer focal length is really advantageous if your vantage point is a good distance from the waterfall. A telephoto lens will give you that really close-up look even if you aren't that close. And especially when you have waterfalls that have a lot of mist and so forth, the telephoto lens is really going to help you get into that waterfall without having to deal with all that mist. Telephoto lenses also compress the scene. Now, what this means is that the longer the focal length, the larger the objects in the background will appear and the closer to the subject that they will appear as well. Now, when you look at wide-angle or telephoto examples of waterfalls, you can see a huge difference in how they appear. Switching things up and using different lenses is yet another way to practice your creativity to get better shots. Now, while waterfalls can be absolutely epic and beautiful, this doesn't mean that the photos of them can't be enhanced by including other elements. And when composing your waterfall shots, think about how the foreground might help improve the composition. By including rocks in the foreground, for example, you can introduce a rugged texture to the shot that really works well with the smoothness of the waterfall. Now, by heading downstream a little bit and photographing waterfalls from a kind of a greater distance, you can use the leading lines created by the stream to help lead the eye deeper into the shot towards the waterfall. And sometimes adding extra elements to the waterfall will enhance the beauty of the shot and make it even more compelling to view, like the greenery and the rapids in the foreground of this shot. These are just examples, but you get the point. With that, you've got 9 tips you can put to use the next time you're on the hunt for a waterfall to photograph. Like with anything else in photography, practice your waterfall photography skills. Guys, it takes time, practice, and patience. Now I hope with these tips you'll have a clear direction as to what you need to take your best shot. But don't just rely on these tips for help. My buddy Scott Soderberg is a waterfall photography master. He's been shooting for the last 30 years and has traveled and photographed waterfalls literally all around this planet. In fact, most of the photos I used as examples in this video are his. When I decided I wanted to put together this video, I wanted some badass photos to be able to show off and showcase in here, and I knew he had them. For the last 8 years, he's been spending a lot of time in Costa Rica, which, as you may know, has some of the most breathtaking waterfalls on this planet. Incidentally, Scott leads luxury photography workshops in Costa Rica as well as Washington and Oregon, both of which of course have some pretty spectacular waterfalls as well. Now, I've included a link to his website below so you can get more details on some of his upcoming workshops. All right guys, let's wrap up this video by talking about our current giveaway. We have 3 fantastic prizes up for the grabs. A Nomadic travel pack, a ViewSonic 16-inch VG 1655 portable monitor, and of course, the $100 Adorama gift card. As always, entering the giveaway is really simple. Step 1, like this video and subscribe to our channel. Step 2, leave a comment below. In fact, the more of our videos that you watch and leave a comment on, the more chances that you have to win. So get watching some of our other videos and leave some comments. Step 3, register on Photography Talk and introduce yourself in the forum. Now, if you did register on the site and introduce yourself during one of the last giveaways, you're still eligible to win. But as I keep saying, swing on by, say hello, let us know what you're doing. We'd love to see you. And that is it. For complete details on the giveaway, including how to register on Photography Talk and how to say hello in the forum, check out the description below. Good luck. Well, there you go, friend. A few tips on how to photograph waterfalls. If you found some value with this video, you know what to do. Go down below, hit that little like button, hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, kick that bell to be notified each time that we come out with a new video. My friends, I'm gonna go scooting out, so you get out there, stay healthy, and create your best shot.